Good afternoon and welcome to Lunch Break with the Rabbi. I know we haven't been on this week a lot, so here we are for a Shabbos edition, and we want to wish you, first of all, a good Shabbos, a healthy Shabbos, and only good week to come. This Shabbos is going to be also Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, that we bless the new month of Av. The month of Av is considered one of the saddest months in the year, and it is a time where we ask and we pray, as we know that the month of Av is also called Menachem Av, that God comforts us, that God brings us comfort through the building, hopefully, of the Beis HaMikdash. And just like during this time, the unfortunate destruction of many tragedies that happened at this time, we ask of God to comfort us and make this time a time of happiness and a time of gladness and a time of joy, and transform that sadness into joy during these special times. This week's Torah reading also concludes the book of Numbers, Matos and Masei, and therefore next week we'll be starting the book of Deuteronomy. The book of Deuteronomy, Moshe says on his last month of passing, so all the events that happened in Moshe's life basically end at the book of Numbers. At the end of the book of Numbers, at the beginning of this week's Torah reading in the Parsha of Matos, God comes to Moshe and says, you have one job left before you pass on. And that job is to take revenge of the people of Midian. Who are the people of Midian? So if you recall, a few weeks ago, there was a fellow by the name of Bilam who tried to curse the Jewish people. He wasn't able to curse the Jewish people. Therefore, he went along and said that he's going to give advice to Balak, which is that you should tell the Midianite princesses that they should go about the Jewish men, seduce them, and cause them to serve the idolatry. And because of that, a terrible plague ensued. And the Jewish people were then, many Jewish people died in a plague, and so on and so forth, until Pinchas came and stopped it. Over here in this week's Torah reading, God comes to Moses and tells Moses, one last thing before you die, is that you should take revenge of the people of Sodom. Of the people of Midian. Taking revenge of the people of Midian, meaning, in this case, because they sent their daughters and caused the Jewish people to sin, you're going to take revenge and get rid of them. Meaning that there's no other reason that you're going to now attack them. You're going to take revenge and wipe them out because of what they've done. The question is over here, since when do Jewish people take revenge? Since when is this a type of Jewish attitude? And not only that, is this the last thing that Moshe has to do before his passing? If you look in any other war that the Jewish people waged, whether it was against Egypt or against the other places, there was one exception of one tribe that never had to join the war, which was the tribe of Levi. The tribe of Levi never had to join in waging any war. The only war that they were drafted to was this war against the people of Midian. What was so unique about this war? That A, it's called revenge, B, to wipe them out, C, that even the tribe of Levi, and D, that it has to be done, that this is Moshe's last will and testament, so to speak. God tells them, take revenge on the people of Midian, and only then will you be able to go on to the next world. Again, what is so special about this war? Why was it that this war was so important that every single Jew had to participate, even the tribe of Levi? The Talmud tells us of a story, a very, very famous story, about once there was this wealthy man that was making a celebration. And he told his servant to go invite his very good friend named Kamsa. Mistakenly, the servant went and invited his nemesis, his great enemy, named Bar Kamsa. Bar Kamsa, receiving the invitation, though he was surprised, he thought that maybe this fellow decided to put all grudges aside and invited him to the celebration. Bar Kamsa put on his best attire and best clothing and said, you know what? Let me come and I'll go see what is going on and what the celebration's all about. He came into the celebration, and when this wealthy individual sees Bar Kamsa was his nemesis, his greatest enemy, hated him from every part of his body, said, get out of here. What are you doing here? And chased him out. Bar Kamsa pleaded and said, don't embarrass me. I'll pay for my meal. He says, I don't care. He said, I'll pay for 10 meals. I'll pay for 20 meals. I'll pay for half the party. He said, I don't care. Get out. And he chased him out like an old dog, embarrassing him in front of everybody. Bar Kamsa was so upset that it bothered him so much that the rabbis were sitting there and nobody protested to what was going on, to this travesty of justice, to take a person and throw him out like a dog in front of everybody. He said, I'm going to take revenge on this person. And he went to the Roman emperor, and the story is told that because of the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, this ultimately led to the destruction of the Second Temple. But what happened over here? What was the hatred here? And the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa teaches us that the reason and why, the cause of the destruction of the Second Temple, was because of baseless hatred to one another. That means there was no reason, there was no rationale you could explain why this wealthy person was chasing him out. You know, many times there are people that have fights over things. They fight over money, they fight over business things, they have different issues that come up in life that people fight over things. But as long as there's a reason of why there's a fight, there's a way to reconcile the fight. But if the fight is only because of a person's ego, and they can't put that aside, and the ego is what's pushing them to hate and pervasive amongst this whole argument, there is nothing in the world that can be able to stop this. This fight is going to go on and forever. Why? Because it's not a rationalistic fight. It's not a rationalistic argument. It's because you touch that person's ego. There's nothing in the world that you can do to be able to soothe it or to be able to bring it back. That's why it's called baseless hatred. Because it's baseless. It has no grounding. It has no purpose. It has no reason. It brings nothing to it. There was once, when we talk about it, in all the different stories and fights and arguments that the Jewish people had to wage wars with while they were in the desert, while they came into the land of Israel, every single one of those arguments, the people that were waging war, those people had an agenda. Let's take, for example, Pharaoh. Pharaoh enslaved the Jewish people because the Jewish people were becoming too popular, and therefore he had to stem their growth. Go a little bit further, whether it's the Edom, Moab, all these people didn't want the Jewish people to go through their property. The 7 nations, also, they didn't want the Jewish people to take their land. So there was a rationale behind it, and therefore the tribe of Levi, it wasn't a demand, it wasn't called revenge, that every single Jew had to take part of it. When it came to the people of Midian, the people of Midian were waging war against the Jewish people for no other reason other because they hated them. Because it touched in the ego of Bilam that he wasn't able to curse the Jewish people. There was nothing, there was no reason, there was no purpose of their fight or of their war for no reason. And therefore God comes along and says, listen here, you know what? This is where you have to take revenge. This is where hate is necessary. This is the enemy that you gotta hate. This is the enemy that you got to get rid of, which is a fight and a war which comes because of absolutely no reason and is only because of ego. What God is telling every single one of us is, how do we get along with one another? What are the cause to the biggest arguments and strife amongst one another? Is baseless hatred. Is hatred that's only because of our ego. So step number 1 is to recognize and acknowledge, why are you being offended? Why are you not getting along with the person? Because he touched your ego? Because he hurt your self-esteem? Is that what's bothering you? Okay, recognize that. And number 2 is to recognize and know, as the sages tell us, after action goes the heart. Don't delve too deeply into it. When you respond and reciprocate to a person who had baseless hatred and hurt your ego with love, you automatically draw them back and bring them back into the fold, and the friendship again brings back into one. If the holy temple was destroyed because of baseless hate, the way to rebuild it is through baseless love. Let me finish with a story of 2 Hasidic Jews, students of the first Chabad Rebbe. They were both partners in a very big business idea. And as it happens with partners at times, they had a little bit of a falling out, and one of them reported the other to the government about certain taxes that he wasn't being paid. Because of that, he was imprisoned because of it. He sat through his 2 years in prison, and after he comes out of prison, he hears that his friend who reported him to the government, also when he reported his friend to the government, didn't realize that they were partners, that he was reporting himself, and now also was now taken to prison. This friend went over to his partner, who reported him initially to the government, went over to his partner's wife and said, listen here, I know your husband was now taken to prison being that he was my partner, I'm going to support you and your family for the duration of the time that he's imprisoned. When the first Chabad Rebbe heard of this, he took this and he took the story to heart, and he added a few lines in the Tanya. When he heard this, and he said that the way to respond to when somebody wrongs you is to go and do a kindness to that person. As we say in English, kill him with kindness. When somebody you feel has wronged you, hurt your ego, done something really wrong, what are you going to do? Fight back? Hate back? What have you accomplished? What have you done? What is their true revenge? Is with kindness. Do something good to that person. Reciprocate in kind, and you will see it will bring you two together and get rid of any animosity and hatred. My dear friends, as we begin the month of Av, we begin a time where we mourn the destruction of the Holy Temple that was destroyed because of baseless hate. Let us increase and do our part of baseless love, loving every Jew with kindness, doing our best. Even if it is somebody that wronged us, do something kind to them. So we should be able to bring the people together so we can stand as one and hope and pray for the rebuilding of the Holy Temple before this Tisha B'Av and this 9th of Av. Instead of fasting and mourning the destruction of the temple, we will celebrate the building and will be for a great holiday. Good Shabbos, and hopefully we'll see you next week with Lunch Break with the Rabbi. Have a great week and a good Shabbos.